So it's that time where we talk about the biggest pop culture stories of the week. And this week, it's all about basketball. From PK Subban's controversial comments on the game to some Netflix shows that are taking us beyond the court. The group chat is here. Let's go. I'm Rad Simonpillai, sitting in for Elamin Abdel Mahmoud. This is Commotion. Okay, so earlier this month, the NBA and the NHL held their annual fan appreciation events. And the NHL, for the first time ever, they replaced All-Star Weekend with the Four Nations Face-Off. And they got a ton of praise for that. The NBA All-Star Weekend, however, not so much. And to pour salt on some of that wound, we got PK Subban. He's the former NHL player and sports analyst who was asked to chime in on both events, and he did not hold back.
I got a question for the NBA players. What the hell are you playing for? What are you playing for? It's not about the money. You make all the money. What, you're injured? Well, there's a difference between being hurt and injured. Are you hurt or are you injured? There's a difference. In hockey, we play hurt. I love basketball, but you gotta be on the court. You gotta be there, and when you're there, you gotta go all in. The fans gotta feel that they're getting their money's worth. And right now, there's a big difference between what the NHL's doing with those events and what the NBA's doing. Four Nations works because the players are all in. They're all in.
That's PK's blistering take on ball players. And look, it struck a chord with fans. Morgan Campbell, Marlon Palmer, and Andrea Williams, they all have thoughts, and they're here with me now. Welcome to Commotion, y'all.
Hey, what's up?
Hey.
It's always fun to be here. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, so Andrea, I'll start with you because, PK Subban, he's known for being this, bombastic and even at times divisive figure. But this moment felt a little different because, he was tapping into a sentiment that I think a lot of fans are agreeing with. And even sports analysts like Stephen A. Smith, he was feeling it. And even PK's haters are kind of got a point, right? So, Andrea, where are you standing on PK's comments?
With all of those people you just mentioned. I am, I'm that person that grew up in the 90s, and I have kids now, and it's was the TV black and white back then, right? So I'm always throwing it back. But for real, it's not the same. The product, to me, it's unwatchable. And I think that, yeah, I get the divisiveness around PK and this notion that, we don't want to hear this from him, but it's legit. And this is a guy who played, in the NHL. They don't make the money that the NBA players make. I can remember this time where it was all right, you had to get on the floor and you had to be great, and you had to be great over an extended period of time to get to this brand awareness, to become this superstar, to have this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And you can sort of bypass that now in the NBA. These are the guys that this is a byproduct of basketball becoming this global game. These guys are becoming these global superstars. And so now it's they're phoning it in. That's real.
Right. Okay, well, Marlon, let me tag you in on this. Are you feeling the same way, or do you have a different take on PK's critique?
Well, right message, wrong messenger. I just don't like that he said it. I think, you know what I mean? I kind of agree with him. I feel like a lot of his talk is really passive aggressive, and he's actually talking to LeBron. That's what it feels like, because everything, if you just have LeBron in mind when he's speaking, it checks every single box. And I think he didn't like that LeBron checked out so late before the All-Star game. Could have given that spot to somebody else, someone argued. And LeBron arguably is still one of the largest players in the NBA. So, him being on the floor for that weekend is paramount. And then we saw him first game of the Lakers back after the All-Star break. He played amazing. So it's for the fans that pay a lot of money to go see these players, if you go to any city that LeBron's played in, I've gone to a Chicago Bulls game, and there were more LeBron jerseys than there were Bulls jerseys. So he's a big deal, and he needs to act that way.
Okay. So, Morgan, let me just get you to just tap in on what Marlon's saying there. What are you thinking?
Where do you want me to start? I think of PK Subban's various rants, because the thing was, he did a bunch of these rants all sort of with the same theme, which was that NBA players are soft and entitled. Hockey players are rough, tough, dedicated, will fight for the guy next to them. He said basketball players need to fight like hockey players do, even though we all know that, to paraphrase my good friend Pasent Matar, who was writing about the concept of journalistic objectivity, fighting is a white privilege. You cannot have a fist fight in an NBA game without people getting suspended, ejected, possibly having the cops called on them. I think that happened last year. So let's dispense with the idea that NBA players can go out here and fist fight to show how dedicated they are to each other. And it's just such a false equivalency between the Four Nations Cup and a run-of-the-mill NBA All-Star weekend, because the reason the Four Nations Cup exists is because the NHL was having the exact same problem with its All-Star weekend that the NBA has every year, in the sense that the fans weren't that interested because the players weren't that interested, because professional sports are rough, they're rugged, they're intense, and if you have an exhibition game mid-season, nobody's going out here trying to break somebody's neck in an exhibition game. So now, and I don't know how much time PK still spends in Canada. I don't know how much time he still watches Sports Center with an RE instead of an ER, Sports Centre, north of the border. But if he was watching a lot of Sports Centre, he would have recognized too that the talk heading into Four Nations Cup was whether or not this group of NHL players was going to take this tournament seriously. And if this whole thing hadn't been politicized with the tariffs, with Trump weighing in, I'm not sure you get that line brawl at the beginning of the first game, and I'm not sure you get that same level of intensity. So there's all sorts of factors contributing to the intensity that we saw in the Four Nations Cup that we don't see in the NBA All-Star game, and that we never saw, quite frankly, in the NHL All-Star game in previous years. And to single out LeBron James passive aggressively, as Marlon pointed out, listen, if anybody has earned the right to take the night off, it is 40-year-old LeBron James, who goes deep into the playoffs every year. So like on the calendar, LeBron James is in season 21. LeBron James's knees think he's in season 28. He deserves a night off, especially in a low intensity game when he knows he has to go back, even though Luke is there. So LeBron, it's a lighter workload on LeBron, but the man's 40 years old with 50-year-old knees. He's entitled to a night off.
Well, I mean, I want to unpack something, a nugget of what you were talking about there, because I understand, some of your issue with PK's comments. I mean, it's the way they feed into this history of anti-blackness surrounding the NBA, and specifically the predominantly black players in the NBA. Did I get that right? Is there something more to say about that?
Yeah, well, it's PK on the one hand is very impassioned, but on the other hand, this is all very boilerplate. This is an old script, this idea that the white players in a given sport, even if they're not talented, they're hungry, they're dedicated, they're tough. Whereas the black players, they're lazy, they're entitled, they're talented, but they're not dedicated. And so you can apply this to almost every sport, and it takes a slightly different form, but it is the same script. And so what PK did was sort of tap into this pre-existing beef that a lot of fans have with black athletes that they perceive as entitled. And it would be different too if PK did not follow that up with all these pro-Trump tweets. Right. You take those two things together, and it just looks a lot like he's auditioning to be the next Jason Whitlock, which is fine. Because again, as I was writing yesterday, look, the way the wind is blowing in the media industry right now, it is directly in the face of outspoken, left-leaning people of color. But there is always one chair at the media table marked Black Contrarian, and if PK wants that chair, you can have it.
Oh my God, he gets the
Samuel Jackson and Django.
There you go. Andrea, I want you to tap in on what Morgan's saying there. Talk to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of things can be true at the same time. I think Morgan made some really, really great points. I think that narrative absolutely exists. I'm sure there are tons and tons of white season ticket holders like, man, these guys, you know what I'm saying?
These DEIs, these wokenesses.
You know what I'm saying?
POCs.
Like, we're giving them all this money. What are they doing? I think it's also valid at the same time that they're not doing what they could be, should be, probably would have a decade ago done. And I think we have to be able to acknowledge that. I'm a columnist at the Tennessean, and breaking from basketball a bit, but there's been a lot of drama going on at TSU, our land grant HBCU, historical HBCU in town. And there was a lot of drama around the last administration and some of the decisions that the former president made. And it was like, as soon as people start talking about it, it's like, wait a minute, how dare you attack this Black woman when, okay, but also we know that she's making bad decisions, right? So we can have this history of attacking unfairly often, I will definitely say, Black folks in positions of leadership or power or who make a ton of money like these guys in the NBA. And also it's true that sometimes we get in positions and don't make all the right decisions. And I think part of why PK's comments went as wide as they did is because people aren't just frustrated about the All-Star break. Like, it is an ongoing thing. Like, people are sick in general from the time the league starts to, May, June, when all of a sudden everybody wants to get serious.
Okay, well, look, we got to put PK to bed for a bit and just switch gears here because we're going to talk about a new Netflix docuseries that is looking back at the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris and specifically some of the men's basketball teams vying for gold. Have a listen.
The United States men's basketball team has won 4 straight Olympic gold medals, but the world is coming.
We have Nikola Jokic, best player in the world.
We're not a timid the United States at all.
More and more people know what's coming from France.
They're playing for the country. It's a different pride.
The message is simple. Win.
That's a bit of the Netflix series, a 6-part series called Court of Gold. Marlon, I understand you watched this series twice, which is impressive.
Chef's kiss.
You're a busy guy. Why do you make time to go back to this a second time?
Well, I love basketball, first of all, but I also love the Olympics, and I felt like this latest tournament was one of the best we've ever seen. And to get the behind the scenes look at that is like gold to me, no pun intended. But they covered this nicely. I felt like I love seeing the dynamic between the younger players playing with the players they idolize, like KD and Ant in that relationship. I loved how much screen time Canada got in this documentary, which is like, usually you'd think America would dominate the majority of the series, but it was a good balance. You got to see a behind the scenes look at like a softer side of Dylan Brooks, which is rare. I just loved how they handled this series, and even that moment with KD crying when he like just realizes how important sports is to everyday lives and how it touches people and how important the fans are. It was just great.
Man, I'm feeling the affection in your voice.
Yeah.
Andrea, did you feel the same way? What did you think of the series?
Yeah, I liked it. I think what it did really well, if we're going to piggyback this on the conversation that we were having, that I was primarily having about the NBA, I think this did a really good job of capturing that urgency and that need to win at all costs, that we do lose. I will keep saying this during the NBA season, right? Like we see like early in the first episode, it's like Steve Kerr is talking to Ant. He's like, yo, you're dope. Rebound. Right? Let's rebound. And I think that is part of why it like you could not show up for this, right? All the guys know that on the floor. Serbia's hungry, Canada's hungry, everybody's hungry, right? And it's not a question of are these American NBA guys talented? It's are you going to show up? Are we going to really see what you're capable of in this moment, in this setting? They had to. And I think this doc did a really good job of capturing all the emotion around that. And yeah, it felt like home.
Okay, so winning with certified basketball fans here, but Morgan, Morgan, I know you went into this docuseries with this I guess apprehension towards sports documentaries being kind of over indexed lately. How did this series change your mind on that? How'd you feel about it?
And it's not just that they're over indexed, it's just we see the exact same documentary over and over again with different sports. Like the stuff that's on Netflix now is the polar opposite of like Last Chance U, which really put Netflix on the map as like a platform for sports documentaries. Because Last Chance U, you had players you never heard of, in a league you never heard of, and nobody's sitting for interviews. It's just cameras, editing, telling the story. You have these storylines, and the storylines weren't always pretty. There was a lot of conflict and a lot of people who start out as heroes sort of being revealed in the end as jerks. And what we have seen since then is the opposite. There's a lot of infomercials. and even amongst infomercials, the current crop are sort of conflict diverse. Because even if you look at the first season of Drive to Survive, there's this turmoil with Daniel Ricciardo, because his team he's like 28 years old, and his team is treating him like he is over the hill, and they keep bringing in these younger guys and trotting them past Daniel Ricciardo, like, ha ha ha, we brought you replacements. But that type of conflict is sort of missing from like Sprint, the track and field one. That was just a pure infomercial. So I was wondering, one, who's the audience for this one, given that we already know who all these basketball players are. Two, how are they going to treat conflict? And honestly, the first episode, it was very heavy-handed because they have to keep telling you. I should have kept track of how many times they sent some iteration of the message that the rest of the world is either catching up to the U.S. or the rest of the world is no longer scared of the U.S. Like, guys, I get it. This is the 45th time you told me this. But as a Canadian sports fan, I will tell you, it was sort of gratifying after Sprint, because when you watch that second season of Sprint, and the way that they decided not to pay off the storyline at all about Canada defeating the U.S. in the men's relay, that they did take some time to explore the Canadian teams, explore what the stakes are, what the stakes were for Team Canada, and explore. And one thing they did that no one ever does here is really lay out the reality that there was a basketball culture here in Toronto that predates Vince Carter, because most tellings of this story are that nobody ever touched the basketball here until Vince Carter won the dunk contest, and that's absolutely not true. And so in that sense, it really succeeded. But the thing that stood out to me, one of the things that stands out to me is like, and I don't know what happens in later episodes. I'm through 2 episodes right now. I have not heard from LeBron James. LeBron James is not sat for an interview. One thing they did reveal about LeBron James, that he appears to dye his beard, because in that one scene where they're all getting their kit on to go out for the opening ceremonies, LeBron James got a lot of dye in that beard, but by the time they get on that boat, that beard is like jet black, like he's the lost member of the Mighty Mighty Dells. Right. So I was, but this one I will give it credit, because again they are more interested in sort of exploring the tension than Sprint was. Like, Sprint was a pure infomercial, and that's what I was bracing for. But at least we're seeing not just you, and the more interesting storyline to me isn't the U.S. versus the rest of the world catching up. It's the American players. The best American players are all old. Right. And it's these guys versus themselves, these guys versus Father Time. And what happens, and they're starting to at least demonstrate this, that the NBA, you do this, you agree to this as a PR exercise, but one of the things the NBA has been needing for a long time is some compelling storylines that don't involve LeBron James. I love LeBron James. He's a great athlete, great ambassador, this and that, but like he cannot carry the league public relations wise forever. So this seems like a bit of an attempt to move past that, but we'll see what the next 4 episodes tell me.
Okay, great. Like, look, we got to move on. I'm Rad Simonpillai, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. We do have time for one more story. Netflix has a new sports comedy series. It's called Running Point, and it's executive produced by Mindy Kaling. Stars Kate Hudson as the daughter of a wealthy sports family, and she's unexpectedly tasked with running a basketball franchise, the basketball franchise that her family owns. Have a listen.
I work in a family business, the greatest basketball franchise in the history of the game, the Los Angeles Waves.
Isla, I am making you the president of the Waves.
When I was a little girl.
We're a family, sis. We got your back, no matter what people say.
What are they saying?
Just the fact that you're a Nepo baby and you don't know what you're doing, but you're old, so it's like you're like a Nepo crone.
Oh my God.
So that's a bit of the trailer from Running Point. And we asked all 3 of you to watch the first episode of this series. Marlon, are you going to watch this one twice? Like, what are you thinking of this?
No, not at all.
No.
I will not be revisiting. I have no plans on watching this. I felt like I was watching Jeannie Buss's therapy or something. I don't know what was happening, but it just seemed like, I was like, is this not her? Why can't we just call her Jeannie Buss? Like, this is clearly about her.
Who's Jeannie Buss, for those who don't know?
Lakers, was she owner, I guess, now at this point? Daughter of Mr. Buss, the guy who started Showtime and all that. Which Winning Time is in the back of my head while I watch this. And it's much better. And so it's like, I can't separate the two. Maybe they should have gave it some time. But in the pantheon of new basketball shows, this is bottom tier. Like Eddie was better with Whoopi Goldberg. I feel like that was.
Well, I mean, this definitely feels like Mindy Kaling is doing her Ted Lasso, but on the basketball court. But,
horrible Ted Lasso, horrible.
Andrea, look, I mean, this is a series that is it's using comedy as a way into the story of a woman, specifically a nepo baby woman, and of course, Marlon made the parallels there to what we might be seeing as a story of a woman in a very male-dominated industry. How did those themes, how did they resonate with you within this first episode?
Yeah, I was so disappointed. I mean, when I saw, before I knew, I didn't even really know initially that it was a comedy. And I saw just kind of like the summary, like the treatment of it. I was like, yo, we're going to get like a series version of like Any Given Sunday, which is like probably one of my all-time favorite movies. And I get into it and I'm like, yeah, it's definitely, this is GD Bus for sure, which I saw that like Kate Hudson sat down and met with her in advance. So yeah, the vibes are there for sure. And it feels like a Mindy Kaling joint, which is like, that's no shade to her, but it feels like she's like, we've got the Asian representation. It feels like as un-Black as you could make it. Like if the challenge was like, let's do an NBA show and make it like as little Black as possible, like this would be that. It's just, there's a lot of stuff going on. And to the point about, what the story that we could tell about, a woman in this position, particularly in this moment in time, I feel like all of that is lost. It's so slapsticky. Like, and again, there are some people that are gonna like if you want to show up for this comedy thing, then maybe you'll be okay with that. But if you're looking for that sort of deeper mess, even if we wanted to go deep on Jeannie, like to be clear, these shows that were supposed to be, that Winning Time was really supposed to be that show about the Lakers. People were upset about that, right? So there is an opportunity to do a scripted show that's not directly tied to any specific teams or players, but really go deep on these issues that we understand exist. And this wasn't that at all.
Right.
It would have been way better as a drama. You're right.
Well, I mean, the idea of this is so un-Black, especially when you have Chet Hanks playing the star player of the team.
I mean, that's a whole thing. Yeah. I'm like,
guys,
we didn't get
Let's nail it
Jamaican.
Listen,
He's Jamaican.
Morgan, I just got a minute left here, but I just want to talk. The Winning Time is being referenced, of course, is the series, the dramatization of the Lakers dynasty. There's also another series on FX called Clip that's dramatizing the scandal around LA Clippers owner Donald Sterling. How is this series, holding up as a comedic take on a franchise? And buzzer beater answer here because the clock's counting down.
Not very well. The one thing that they do by fictionalizing it, we don't have to sit here and measure each actor against their real life counterpart. And the reality is there is nobody in the NBA like Chet Hanks, aka Travis Bug. And one of the things that stands out, one, it glorifies the executives, and there's a huge swath of sports fans that really love the executive and treat players as incidental. So this is the series for them, whereas Winning Time told us the story of players. But also there's this big scene where they say, Travis Bug, you have a 4-year, $44 million contract, which if you follow the NBA, that's like third string point guard money. I'm not bending over backwards to please a $44 million point guard when there's people making $250 million out here. So to answer your question, how does it measure up against Winning Time specifically? Not very well.
Okay, cool. Listen, we got to leave it there. But, I've never been as invested in a sports conversation as I have here with y'all today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Morgan Campbell is a senior contributor at CBC Sports. He's in Toronto. Andrea Williams writes for Vulture and The Tennessean. She's in Nashville. And Marlon Palmer is a comedian and co-host of Ace and Marlon in the Morning on Flow 98.7 FM, and he's in Toronto. You can catch Court of Gold and Running Point streaming now on Netflix. And that's it for Commotion today. If you're listening to this on the podcast, don't forget to give us a follow. That would really help us out. You can also check us out on YouTube and Instagram. We're at Commotion CBC. I'm Rad Simonpillai, sitting in for Elamin Abdel Mahmoud. Elamin is back on Monday. Thank you for listening.